challenges. So game devs today are facing these upheavals and these shifts in the globalization of gaming and the ability to make games and where talent can come from all these things. What are the biggest challenges you see game devs face today?
Well, let's see. I guess there are two. Making games is hard. Just to start off, we should just acknowledge that this is a challenging. It's very rewarding. I love making games, but there's a couple of things that are just very difficult about the difficulty level of the craft and the business of it. It's very technical, and the technology changes all the time. So you either have to learn new tool sets, or you have to create them yourselves. And there's a kind of an R&D and a technology component to it. At the same time, it's very subjective. We're telling stories, or we're building in a language that is described with words like fun, which you can't deterministically define. So it's art, it's art and tech, at the same time. They have to work together, right? So it's hard. That is a way of saying there's risk, inherent risk in creating a video game business, because it's not easy to predict the outcomes. So if you're looking at like things that are challenges for folks who are making games, or folks who want to start game companies and things like that, in today's climate, I would say probably one of the biggest challenges is getting projects funded, which will probably be of no surprise to anybody listening. But we went through, our industry has always been growing, and when the industry was young, a lot of games were basically funded through sweat equity and made in the garage. And then as real distribution and real business was fueling the development of games, you'd get this interested party financing. So you'd have a game publisher who would give you money to make a game. And as we started to see games being able to deliver these 10 to 100x returns on investment, not just, we spent $1 million to make a game and it made, $5 million, but, we spent $10 million to make a game and it's now $1 billion a year business. You start to see venture financing become popular. And that has been the trajectory this business has been on. The next step on that train would be private equity coming in and putting hundreds of $millions into gaming companies, which I think we're starting to see a little bit of. But
I've seen just a smidge of that. Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Yeah. But, so with what happened so that's just to set a little context to some of the challenge that we have today, which is when we hit basically 2020 and sales continued to go up, we saw an interesting thing happen, which was folks who were a good number of folks who were at these very successful game studios that decided that they were going to start their own studio, make their own game, and that was, I don't know if it was a trend or if it was like, COVID happened and people looked in the mirror and said, I'm not in my office anymore. What am I doing? I should do this myself. But a lot of startups, launched in that time period, and a lot of them were funded by VCs, and a lot of them were funded on the thesis that, we've seen this model happen at a Riot or
Blizzard, Bungie,
Blizzard,
big ones, right? King.
Yeah. So this is now a model that we should, as investors, we should be chasing. And a lot of investment went into games along that model of we're going to put 10, 20, 30, $50 million into a project that eventually will be returning $1 billion a year. And I think what people maybe took for granted or didn't calculate was this is a difficult business. It is really hard to predict where the winners and losers are going to come from. The industry has always grown on this portfolio approach of we're going to fund 10 things or 20 things, just like a Hollywood slate is built. And one or two of them will be successful, and the successes will be so big and outsized that it will just float the whole operation in a positive direction. And when you have a series of individual investments into these risky projects and you only get one or two pop out, what that means is like 80 to 90% of those investments become non-viable. And you couple that with some dumb finance stuff, like interest rates went up. So it's like, hey, my money might be better elsewhere. You saw a lot of drying up of investment from venture capital in the industry. So to get things funded, and also at the same time, we had like a bunch of pullback from the big publishers, and you had a bunch of consolidation. So like, which publishers do you go to go get your game financed today? What VC do you go to pitch your game to get funded today? There are some answers to that question, but that whole market for financing, that whole process for financing has gotten a lot tighter. So less games have been getting funded, and the bar for getting funding, or the kinds of projects that are getting funding, they don't look like they used to look, 5 years ago.
Yeah.
That's a huge challenge. That's the challenge on the front side. I would say there's another big challenge on the back side where there's a lot of choice for people today. When we make games for anyone, but it's a digital medium, and we don't, everybody has heard this. You're not competing for game time. You're just competing for people's time. They're on YouTube, they're on, they're watching Netflix, or they're playing games. And there's a lot of stuff that's free. If you maybe you have Game Pass, maybe you subscribe to Netflix, or maybe you're just watching YouTube, or maybe you're just on TikTok with your friends. There's a lot of stuff that's free. There's at one point there were like 40,000 free-to-play mobile games getting published every month. I think Steam, what is it? What was there, like 15,000 games launch on Steam last year?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
So getting discovered, getting your game noticed, downloaded, played, has also gotten harder. It's more competitive. The outlets in which players can find your game, in some ways, it's better because you used to have to go and buy shelf space for Walmart, but you knew it was for sale. So as long as you could actually write the check, and there was a big bar to get over to be able to write that check. As long as you were in that cohort, you could find space for your game and give it a chance. And today it's a lot more difficult to find players and get discovered, especially in these free ecosystems. So to me, looking at the business aspect of making games, if you look at just the creative craft, I think it's never been a better time to make games. There's the number of tools that are available, the amount of content that are available, the number of people you can collaborate, the tools that you have to collaborate locally or online. They've never been better. But if you think about the health of the business and where the challenges are, all these challenges are, of course, overcomable, but they're like getting the financing together to actually fund the development of a project. And then it's on the marketing and distribution side of it. It's like, how do I get my game discovered into these discovery platforms, optimized for being surfaced at the top, played, and how do I sync that with the business model of my game so that it actually returns that investment back, so I can make another one.
You compared to movies earlier. Another one that I like to think about now is, I think music went through its own period of the democratization of the tools and the ability to distribute, but that didn't lead to everybody making out pretty well. It led to a few people making a lot and a lot of people making nothing. And I've speculated that something that kind of saved the music industry in a sort of way was platforms like Spotify and Pandora that provide somewhere where if you're just listening, you're going to hear things you haven't heard before. And if you like it, you'll hear more of it. And that there's actually that it led to this weird funding model where you can put your song up, but songs are engaged with very differently than games. You can't really do that in games in the same way because, 2 to 3 minutes, you're just figuring out the controls or something like that. Yeah. And it would contort how you build them.
Yeah, I would say in some ways, music has an advantage that there's a performative aspect of it, and going to see a performance live is special, and is still a thing. I fear a bit for linear entertainment that way. I think the movie theater experience in particular, that is still special, but it sort of feels like the competition of the couch has eroded a lot of the casual moviegoers, just in general, like globalization being such a good thing has a real dark side, which is you build one power curve globally, which means there's way fewer people at the top of it than if you have a bunch of local power curves. And the delta between the rich at the top and everybody else is much greater, to the extent that, if you're at the top of the power curve, you have everything. And if you're not, you have nothing. And that's kind of a crappy trend. I don't see it changing. Whatever. That's a social question. That we're going to have to answer.
No, I think that's one that's just you see that throughout history. But the thing that just popped for me when you were talking was more so perhaps than movies and even music, where culture plays a role in what games people play, but in many ways games push through those barriers more easily than music and movies do. And that's not saying that there aren't people all around the world who watch, music out of Europe or the US or vice versa, but games, they just go, like they just flow everywhere. And so the unification of those power curves into one global almost feels like it's easier in the gaming space than it is in some other mediums.
That's a good point. I agree with that.